So let's review consistency and why it's important. Logical consistency. So a set of statements is logically consistent if they can all be true at the same time in some possible world. And a set of statements is logically inconsistent if they cannot all be true at the same time in some possible world. And it may also be helpful to think of logical consistency as a set of beliefs that do not contradict each other, regardless of whether those beliefs are true. When you're evaluating logical consistency, assume that the statements are true and think about whether they fit together like puzzle pieces, like jigsaw puzzle pieces. So consistency is about understanding the relationships between your beliefs and statements and so on, not proving your beliefs to be true. So when you're evaluating consistency, take the following 3 steps. First, assume the first statement is true, okay, regardless of whether it is true. Second, ask, could the other statements be true when I assume the first statement is true? Right? And this is in some possible world. And then third, if the answer is yes, then they're consistent. And if the answer is no, then they're inconsistent. So the best way to get this is with some practice. Look at the example here. It says, all men have blonde hair. I'm a man. I have brown hair. These 3 beliefs are logically inconsistent because if the first 2 statements are true, the third must be false in all possible worlds. So if I assume the first statement is true, and then the second also could be true, but the third could not, right? Going through those steps again. So these are inconsistent. Also, if the third is true, the first or second must be false. They can't all be true at the same time. Let's look at the next one here. Number 1, I'm a man, I have brown hair, and you have blonde hair. This is logically consistent because all 3 could be true at the same time. Number 2, all dogs are brown, some dogs are not brown. These are inconsistent. They're what we call contradictories because if one is true, the other must be false and vice versa. So they're inconsistent. Number 3, killing another person is always wrong, and then somebody says it's not wrong to kill in self-defense. Well, those, you can stop right there. That's inconsistent, right? And it leads to an interesting discussion, but on the surface, it's inconsistent. Number 4 says all Zizerborgs are facetious, but the poem Zizerborgs are not facetious. You'll notice that number 4 takes the same form as number 2. And it is inconsistent. And I made up these words, Zizerborgs and facetious, right? But the point there is to see that you can tell it's inconsistent even if you don't know the meaning of the words, right? Because of the form it takes. And then we get to number 5. Everyone should be tolerant because there's no way to judge others' beliefs, which is inconsistent because if there's no way to judge beliefs, then how can we judge that others should hold tolerant beliefs? That itself is a form of judging intolerant beliefs to be bad or incorrect. If everyone should be tolerant is true, then there's no way to judge must be false, and vice versa. Of course, that leads to an interesting discussion we'll have later, and that discussion is on relativism. Okay, let's go to number 6. Nobody's ever wrong, but Harry is wrong, and 2 plus 2 does equal 4, not 5 or whatever. And this is, of course, inconsistent, right? Let's go to number 7. This sentence is false. This is a fun paradox. It brings up the question as to whether this even applies. Don't you have to have at least 2 sentences for it to be inconsistent? Well, in this case, it seems like if this sentence is false, then it's true, right? Because if it's false that this sentence is false, then it's true. And if it's true that this sentence is false, then it's false. So if it's true, then it's false. So it's logically inconsistent because it's simultaneously true and false. And logicians have attempted to answer this riddle in various ways, right? Perhaps we should make a rule eliminating self-referential statements, or there's some other way to get out of it. You can research that if you want. Number 9, let's skip to that. It's raining and it's not raining. Now, if we make the claims at 2 different places or times, then they're consistent, logically consistent. However, most people interpret these 2 statements as referring to the same exact place and time. Therefore, they are logically inconsistent when you interpret it like that. And sometimes people say, well, there is no truth because it's ambiguous, right? And I'll make a different video on that, but ambiguity, once you clarify ambiguity, you can determine consistency or inconsistency. So ambiguity is an obstacle, but once you clarify it and eliminate the ambiguity, then you do have truth and consistency. And then finally, number 10 is about this justice, and then Socrates brings up an exception, modern Socrates. Now, this is logically inconsistent. I could qualify and say justice is usually giving people what belongs to them, but this doesn't capture my essential opinion on justice. So What this number 10 shows is that you can be logically consistent or inconsistent in your moral opinions. And the goal is to be consistent in your moral opinions, so you'll be an integrated whole without conflict inside of your psyche or your soul. And so consistency is valuable for that reason, for living a wise life as well as a true life. So that's it. The application and value of this is worth thinking about. As you do philosophy, you'll identify and evaluate and construct many arguments. You'll also identify and evaluate the consistency of your opinions. And this chapter should help you see that logical thinking is not just about what can be proven, it's about the relationships between your opinions. Now, most philosophers value logical consistency because it's a tool to discover truth. They assume that truth is logically consistent. However, some thinkers believe that truth is logically inconsistent. For example, many mystics speak of a God in paradoxical language because they don't believe we can logically understand God. That's mysticism. Many existentialists argue that some aspects of life are absurd, not logically consistent. Discoveries in modern physics, like light being a wave in a particle or non-local causation, may cause us to question the logical consistency of nature. Okay. So, in short, many thinkers believe logical consistency has its limits. But although it may have its limits, most philosophers still value consistency as one way to discover truth, and also one way to live an integrated whole life. And certainly anyone who claims to be logical or rational should take logical consistency seriously. Thanks.